We're recording. Oh, I see people are popping on. That's great. All right, it's about 9 o'clock, so I'm going to begin. I want to first wish everybody a hearty good morning and thank you for joining us early today and during your busy schedules. We are very fortunate to have our two presenters with us, both Duane and Jennifer, who will be talking about information communication technologies and digital media, particularly looking at business and entrepreneurship media. Again, welcome everybody. If you joined us yesterday, you know that we're using the Whova platform and also Zoom. All questions will go through the Whova platform. I am monitoring them and I will be able to interrupt and ask them as we go along the presentation. During the presentation, I just kindly ask you to mute yourselves so that our speakers get the full sound experience, and also to turn off your video screens. At the end, we'll have the opportunity to take a wonderful screenshot of all of us here to document the day. So with that said, I just want to turn it over to both Jennifer and Duane today. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Let me go ahead and get the screen started, and then about halfway in, Jennifer can do her thing. Okay. Is everything okay there? You can see? Okay. No news is good news, but please interrupt me and stop. Ask your questions in the chat, and they'll get forwarded to me verbally because I'm in full screen mode as well. So, thank you for coming to the Counselor Conference. I wanted to explain my sector for which I'm responsible, which is the ICT, Information Communications Technology and Digital Media. And then Jennifer, she'll address the business and entrepreneurship separately. The thing that I want to address today is the sector profile and a strategy, which I think will be relevant not only for educators, deans, instructors, anybody who is interested in going down this path, but what I see a lot of times is that counselors as well, whenever they talk to the students about the assessment of what do you want to do with your life, what do you want to be when you grow up, or which classes would you like to take this semester, even the counselors may need a little bit of hints and tips and ideas about what is this sector and how do I best guide the students in. What I'd like to address today are a sector overview. So what is this sector, including the subsectors, the labor market info that supports why students might be interested in these career paths, some trends which will affect how employment turns out, how the ecosystem develops, and ultimately how our economy and communities are evolving along with the IT inundations that we hit every day, and some recommendations for educators in community colleges or high schools. So without further ado, an overview of the subsectors. A lot of people talk about IT and computers and technology, and you hear a little bit of it either from I'm on Twitter or I am doing social media. I go to a website, I go to a portal. My doctor told me to look this up, that type of thing. But there are two aspects of it for which we kind of have this analysis, which is the stuff that's in front of the screen, which is the front-facing stuff, which you see on the right-hand side, which involves those portals, the web apps, the websites, as well as the people with whom you might interact on a day-to-day basis, the frontline workers, the office managers, customer service, the person who checks you in for whatever it is, and all of these office type of environment areas. So in front of the screen, you have some people that do the business software applications, and I'm starting in the middle of the screen here. And these are the back office people, as well as some of the front office people that are talking to customers where they have to access email, access Excel sheets, have to look up words, have to compose letters in Word or Google Docs. If students are interested in getting into these fields, and I don't really say there's a get into the field, business software applications like Microsoft Office is pretty much everywhere. I don't know that there are many industries in 2020 going into 2021 that don't have computers. So if you are in a role, e.g. working, then you need to have some type of business communications preparation to be effective and efficient and to get promoted. You need to look at the office applications because you're going to need to look at Excel sheets or letters that might have been composed in Google Docs or Word. Maybe there's even PowerPoint like this application that I'm using right now, as well as document management. The document management is especially critical nowadays because a lot of the society is transferring over to electronic stuff. And the documents that we used to have in paper are now electronic. So that how to organize those so you can retrieve the documents is really critical. Now, taking a step back a little bit on the mobile apps, on the websites, we look at digital media. These are the people that are interested in doing some type of design work, some type of layout, and it doesn't have to be for digital. Even if it's print or bus wraps or trolley wraps, ultimately where they go, what the destination is still going to be created in some type of computer application. And then there's also the audio side of it, not only for e-gaming, which is big, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, but also for podcasts and radio and TV. And a lot of the digital engineering that needs to go on in order to do the editing, the sound effects, the musical, the animation stuff even, is also something for which there are jobs. And then finally, the web mobile layout. Now on the entertainment side of things, this is kind of the reason why a lot of people get into digital media, whether they're the shows for television or the movies, but they could also be something simple such as YouTube and podcasting, where people are just interested in trying to become this new star, even for 15 minutes. So that's the front of the screen stuff. Now behind the screen, this is what people in the past have considered IT. These are the people that don't really talk to front-facing customers a lot. And in those areas, we have three primary areas, which are the networking and cybersecurity. And this is all of the infrastructure, the mobile, the Wi-Fi, the 3, 4, 5G, the cabled infrastructure. So all of these bits can go from one place to another. It also feeds into another area, which is the cybersecurity. If you have some type of data and it has value, then there could be some hackers that are trying to take over the information, to change it, or to trick people into providing it when they shouldn't. So there's an entire area that involves not only the infrastructure, but also the protection of the data that flows through and over these different infrastructure conduits. The other sides are computer science. A lot of people, this is what people consider in the past, oh, software development. Here, I'm going to do programming. And the programming nowadays can still take the form of desktop applications. Somebody had to write Microsoft Office after all. But there's also web and mobile that also come into play. So the opportunities have just grown a little bit more. And then on TechForce, this is cloud stuff. Whenever people are buying their Amazon or Google devices and they install them, where they say, hey, Alexa, this, or okay, Google, or hey, Siri, and they're talking to these devices, all of this information, or most of it at least, is processed in the cloud. In order to work in this area, people need to understand what operating systems are, how they work, and then also where this database is actually stored and how do you access it. That's where the databases and the cloud computing come in. So if you are interested in these areas, what do you need to do in order to become a little bit closer to getting into this industry as well as becoming successful here? Just going left to right here, and I talked a little bit about it before, but on the networking cybersecurity area, a lot of industry recognized certificates seem to be popping up quite a bit. Employers aren't interested just in one college degree or university degree at some point because it's just a data point in time. The industry recognized certificates have to be renewed every 3 years. So the companies, they understand, yeah, you're committed and you finished one terminal degree of something, but they also want to know that the person is continuously developing, and that's where the industry recognized certificates come in, and that's on the next slide. There's also the area of scripting for automation. Whenever you are doing the audits of the cybersecurity to know if you've been hacked or to know if there's malware, or even some type of evasive penetration testing, evaluation of the security methods and policies, scripting and automating those steps is really important. And most of those scripts take the form, or they're written in the languages of Python, Bash, or PowerShell. Also, we want to look at intermediate networking. You have to know how to connect up the different towers, the 3, 4, 5G, as well as the internal cabled networking, the switches, the punch down blocks, as well as connect this to that. And then also the cloud frameworks and API. This is how we actually access the data and how we can control the data based on policy. Security policy frameworks are also very important here because people want to know that their data is secured. And we've even seen that in the recent election where there were ballot issues talking about privacy. And privacy is starting to come back as far as people might be interested in controlling it. On behind the screen area where you have software development, a lot of the software development key long knowledge, skills, and abilities are, you have to know a language. You need, you can learn more languages, and I think it's like natural languages as well. If you know French, it might be easier to learn Spanish. But if you learn a language, then you can learn additional languages. However, if you want to hit the ground running, the key languages today going into 2021 of interest are Python, JavaScript, Java, as well as some C variants, C#, C++, C. But in addition to learning a language, students and employees also need to know, well, what methodology would I use? Agile is the most important, but they need to know one. And they also need to know how to debug. Nobody likes a glitchy software piece or an app that closes, as well, finally, as a database. Because people are programming and they have to store data and retrieve data, understanding the different databases, whether they're SQL-based or no SQL-based, is also something of high importance to employers. Now, moving over into TechForest, I mentioned the cloud frameworks. They're cloud frameworks, ways you can access the data on the cloud. So all these devices are connected, but you have to get the data in and out and treat it while it's there in order to manipulate it, to do the natural language processing, as well as data analytics, artificial intelligence, etc. If you've heard about smart cities, smart homes, then this is what controls it. And if you have products and services that rely upon the cloud, then you're going to need people who know how to work the cloud. Also in TechForce, we need to know what type of operating systems are out there, and we need to know in depth how to patch them, update them. Maybe not programming, because we don't work for Red Hat or for Microsoft or for Apple, but we do need to know how can we install apps, remove apps, delete apps, patch apps, update apps, make sure it's secure. And then the scripting, which is equally valuable from networking and cybersecurity, is also important over here in TechForce, because we need to automate what we do. There's just so much data nowadays that one person cannot manually process all that data. That's why the automation is becoming even more and more relevant. And then the database that you see from computer science, people store data in the cloud, whether it's postings from Facebook or messages from Twitter or any other social media or video for that matter, whether it's TikTok or YouTube. That stuff is stored in the cloud and then processed and then even subtitled. And then finally, we have Internet of Things, where we have a lot of these sensors, where the smart cities and the smart homes seem to be popping in, but it's also applicable to agriculture and rural areas, like automated milking parlors or crop monitoring, looking at the different irrigation patterns or pest control. So, and then in the front of the screen, I mentioned for the business software apps, Microsoft Office, but specifically with Word, there are so many options. People need to know how to format the documents, the bold, italics, as well as putting in tables. For the Excel, we want to look at perhaps pivot tables, VLOOKUP, a new one that just came out, XLOOKUP, because there was HLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, now there's XLOOKUP. We also look at, can a potential person do basic business math, adding up stuff, subtracting, dividing, as well as potentially calculating percentages. Nothing fancy like derivatives or second derivatives or any other advanced like matrix algebra, but just basic business math. And then on digital media, a lot of the focus isn't necessarily just on Photoshop and Illustrator and Adobe Premiere, but it's actually a lot of the times now people are getting into, and a lot of Gen Z people love it, they get into the writing and the storytelling and the journalism and content creation. Now it's not about just making it look pretty, but somebody else thought up the idea. A lot of people who have the ideas, the creative types, they also jump in with, now I have my idea, I want to do some concept artistry, I want to do some animations, I want to create a blog, create a YouTube channel. Now they look at, okay, well, how can I edit the video, the audio, the soundtracks, to format my content and make it look appealing so that I can get views. So, and then entertainment, apparently Avid Pro Tools keeps popping up quite a bit. I mainly come from the computer science, networking, cybersecurity area, of the left-hand side of this table. So I'm not as familiar with the entertainment side of things. I'm not a YouTube star. But with regard to the certifications, now I did an analysis just last month on the different certifications that are available, specifically in cybersecurity and networking. And it turns out that of the jobs that were mentioned on Indeed.com, and granted, Indeed may not have all the jobs. It's likely it only has like 20% anyway. But of the jobs that were there, most of the jobs, 86%, contain these terms, or these, whenever I searched for these terms, I got hits, and I found a total, when I added them all up and aggregated them, 5,742 jobs. And I did it for each of the different certifications that students could potentially achieve. When I grouped them based on the organization that sponsored this certification, this industry certification, I found that CompTIA actually held 86% market share, in that we had tons of jobs that were CompTIA based. So this will feed in later to one of the recommendations, where the colleges may want to become academy providers for CompTIA, and the students, because they know I get my Security Plus or my A Plus, that's going to get me a job, they're more propense to actually want to get into this area. And maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because now the employers are also looking for people that have these skills that this certification represents. So when we're looking at the labor market stuff, the data here points to the traditional IT, which I circled in red, being abundant in jobs. We've got lots of jobs, but we don't have enough supply in San Diego and Imperial counties to fulfill this. We've got approximately 11,000 or so jobs that are not being filled on an annual basis in tech forest, computer science, and networking cybersecurity. I think we've also got, actually, that's a little bit less total than the business software apps. So it can't be neglected that people also need to learn the business software apps. And it's not just the office, there's also accounting like QuickBooks. But in the IT areas, we have a gap. And in the business software apps, we have a gap. But a lot of people don't realize that digital media, in spite of the hype and the positioning of it now on social media and on the internet, especially among the demographic of Gen Z people, we actually have too many people that are graduating every year. And part of that is due to the attractiveness perhaps of that subsector, but it's also where the high schools are teaching that. That's what they decided to teach. Perhaps that's what they know. You can't teach what you don't know. And then those same students would transfer into a community college or get certificates based on, I know Adobe, Creative Cloud. Unfortunately, the statistics here represent that perhaps a lot of those people are not going to get jobs. About 1,000 of them every year of the 2,000 that are graduated every year are not going to get jobs. And those that do get jobs are going to have lower wages because there are too many people. It'll be easy to pick up somebody with that skill set. So who are the, once a student has identified, here's the area that I like, and the person studies it, where would these people go once they get a certificate or some diploma in hand in order to get a job? Well, after I looked at this, and it was surprising for me as well, but actually the military, federal government, and Department of Defense and contractors represent 23% of all the jobs in San Diego. So it's big military presence, which probably shouldn't be a surprise to a lot of people. I was just a little bit shocked to see that it was 1/4 of all the jobs. Of those 23%, there's a big focus, for good reason, on cybersecurity. And NAVOR has a little bit less than half of all of the cybersecurity jobs. But there are additional ones out there from the VSAT and the Centec Global and the FBI, General Atomics, Northrop Grumman, that also have jobs. But since they contract with the federal government, or they touch the federal government in some way, they also likely will require security clearance, which for separating military and veterans, not a huge deal. However, for people that aren't former military or don't have security clearance, it could present a bit of a challenge, especially those who have prior criminal records, or maybe they don't have documented status or something. So I also created a list of, well, who are the non-military? Because even if it does represent 1/4 of all the jobs, we still have 75% of the other jobs out there for which people are hiring. In that area, we do have stuff that plays into cloud like ServiceNow, and infrastructure like Qualcomm. Cloud Teradata is also in cloud. The cybersecurity aspects of it with the ESET. And then we have accounting like Intuit, TurboTax and whatnot, but also Medicare like Sharp and Amazon Web Services. We also have other ones down here, but these are the ones I highlighted because these are the ones that I personally spoke to, and I bolded the other ones at the bottom. Just so you're aware that when I do meet with employers, I'm not just going out there to say hi and ask for jobs or internships or promote community college programs. What I really want to do is to talk to them and understand, what are these knowledge, skills, and abilities? Who are you hiring for right now? I can't force them to hire our graduates if our graduates aren't adequately prepared, which is why I have to first understand what are these KSAs and then work my way back into getting quality people. However, right now, one of the other things that a lot of people ask, and with good reason, is, well, what's in it for me? Whenever you look at the jobs and the wages that are paid for these jobs, you can see that all of them are actually above or substantially above the living wage, which is calculated at $15.99 or 16 bucks an hour. Probably can't go up some more. And one other thing you'll notice towards the bottom of here is actually on web developers, its entry level is starting out around 20 bucks an hour. I actually think some of that might actually be depressed in computer user support specialist, because we've got a lot of people who are graduating with digital media degrees and they're oversupply there. If you have questions, so I would recommend you either type them in the chat so that they can be announced out to me. But
Duane, the chat is disabled.
oh, okay. Can Karen
Karen,
Husky talk or
I'm
ask?
sorry, Duane. Karen, the chat is disabled on Zoom, but please put the questions on the Whova application that you're joining from.
Okay. And I can come back to the slide.
You're welcome.
If
We don't see the slide that has the salaries.
Oh, you can't see it?
Karen, everything is on Whova.
Okay, well, I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version. The web developers are like 20 bucks an hour, and a lot of that has to do with digital media and prep and web developing and mobile app developing. Whenever you look at the networking, it actually bumps up to about $25 an hour, all the way up to software developers and information security people that are at the higher end of almost $40 an hour on entry level wages. So they're actually pretty good jobs. They're pretty much double the living wage in San Diego County. So on the trends area, and I'll go back if there are additional questions, but on the trends area, we have industry certifications that are aligning with 3-year expirations. In the past, there were some industry certifications that were get it once and it lasts forever. But the industry pushed back and said, we need current information. Just because people got hacked or had some type of ransomware 5 years ago, we can patch that, but we need people with current skill sets. So it continuously evolves as well. We're also seeing the remote work and distributed teams becoming more prevalent. Part of that was due to the COVID-19, but at the same time, it's been trending for a while where people feel like they could work from home. They want that flexibility. They don't like the hour-long commute in traffic. And the companies also see this lack of productivity and just this wasted time, which is, the lack of productivity, because people they have to go into the office. The only thing is, if people do work remotely, or if they work with teams that are geographically dispersed, they have to have some type of collaboration tools, and they have to have some communication mechanism so that they can coordinate their efforts. And now the companies, because a lot of people working remotely, are becoming more focused and more reliant on applications like Microsoft Teams, or Slack or Discord. And maybe that was part of, maybe Salesforce, had a preview of my slides when they were looking at Slack, who knows? But it's definitely trending towards this new paradigm of we're going to start working remotely, working with other people. And I'm not necessarily convinced, based on what I've heard, that this is going to stop anytime soon. The COVID just forced the hand. But this gives an opportunity for secondary or rural economic regions as well. Now you have people who could work remotely. Maybe they're not going to stay in these really expensive cities. Maybe they don't have to live in La Jolla or Carlsbad. They could live in East County for the lower wage jobs and work their way up. Or maybe other people in Imperial County would have more opportunities to do remote work because the cost of living would be less in these other locations. There's also this tighter product integration with anything related to artificial intelligence or machine learning or virtual or augmented reality. A recent study said that data science was going to be booming, the largest in California, 37% year-over-year increase over the next 5 years in data science and data analytics. And I think a lot of people would say, oh, that makes sense anyway, because you're just creating documents. Businesses are creating documents and content, and they're posting it and publishing it, but nobody deletes anything. They just accelerate. We're creating it faster, we're storing it forever. At some point, we need to analyze the data to make sense of it, and people can't do it anymore. So the programming, the automation, the artificial intelligence is where we have to start relying on computers to help us understand, what does this data mean? There's a need for employees that help create the scripting, the automation, the programming, not only in analyzing the data, which is collected through the sensors, the Internet of Things, smart cities, smart houses, but once it actually gets stored in the cloud, how do you store it, process it, analyze it through an API perhaps on the cloud? And then finally, the cybersecurity aspect of it. How do you know that this data, the medical data, for example, is protected, HIPAA compliant, isn't going to be hacked? So there's a big need, and there will continue to be a big need at least through 2025, 2026, when a new study takes place, which might be even more pronounced. And then finally, we also have automation and data-driven decision-making. A lot of companies and industries now, actually 53% of the IT roles aren't in IT firms. A lot of those are in other industries. Like I said before, I don't know many companies, if any, that don't rely on computers to some degree. And people, when they start collecting this data, they have to make decisions, but they can't empirically gather and make observations because it's just too much data. That's why you see a lot of decision making based on data and reports. In advanced manufacturing, you've got the predictive analytics, when machines are going to break down, how to control the robotics. You have supply chain, the just-in-time manufacturing, the economic order quantities so that they can reduce the warehousing space. And then you also see healthcare with decision support systems. If you're using Epic or Allscripts or some other healthcare app to maintain medical records, the doctors and nurses can look at charting and trend lines to determine, oh, this person is growing at the correct weight, this person is at risk for something, the scoliosis is getting worse, the condition is getting better, something like that. The decision support systems, and also the post-release of medications in society to determine if there are side effects that might have been missed on a macro scale that you wouldn't see on a micro scale. And that applies to the COVID-19 vaccines, where we have the release, people study in a closed environment the applications to see the side effects, but once it's released to the general public, then we'll start to see if there were sort of nuances before. Now they're actually, oh, this is something that wasn't previously diagnosed or notated whenever we did our trials. So what do we do about that? On the community college side, on the recommendations, there's a focused effort right now to store on the CID website curriculum that could be used across high schools, community college, four-year institutions or higher. And once it's aligned with the person studies this at this level and then something more advanced or intermediate at this next level, at that point we can start talking about articulation degrees, career pathways, getting people into jobs, and we can promote that out to the businesses to say, here's a good candidate pool and here's why they are qualified to assume these jobs that we know are coming and that you say you can't fill. Well, here are the people. We also want to add software development to the programming sections. There are about 10,000 people annually who are required, and these people could get good jobs, and they're really good paying jobs, 30, 40, 50 bucks an hour, I don't know. The previous slide had entry level ones, right? But the sky's the limit on what you can request if you know the right skills. What are the skills? Well, learn Python, JavaScript, Java, or C. It includes agile development, debugging, functional and unit testing, and version control, in addition to the regular programming syntax, the variables, the data structures, etc. For cyber programs, try to align to industry certification objectives, whether it's Security Plus or CISA Plus or Pentest Plus. And then also augment the system administration curriculum with automation scripting skills, which affects two subsectors, so that people can automate what they're doing. And then for the digital media people, encourage these hybrid programs for digital media and journalism, the content creation, in addition to the actual skill set of creating and making things look pretty. And then finally, for the remote areas, we want to look at the future of work requirements, which is working remotely. What are the communication, time management skills, responsibilities, and coordination skills that we need in order to communicate with our coworkers? For the K-12, and I'm at the end of it here, just bear with me. For the K-12, we want to look at agreements that would leverage the CID in dual enrollments or some type of AP programs or early college credit. And also, I provided some links here, and the slideshow will be presented later to you, I guess, or through the app, on where can I get a cybersecurity framework. We know it's big, we know it's growing, we know it's going to come. How do I implement this in my class? Well, the NICE framework and the CTAP provide some cybersecurity frameworks, some cybersecurity curriculum that could be taught in K-12. We also want to encourage student participation inside and outside of class so that people become more engaged and they're excited about cybersecurity or infrastructure or learning about different careers, different opportunities and mentorships. So that's what I've got there. I'll open it up for any questions, or you can email them to me as well. My email is on this slide. Plus my mobile phone number. Call me or email me, preferably email me, and I will get you answers as quickly as I can. There are some additional appendices slides later on here involving career ladders with, it's the same information I previously presented. But thank you so much for your time, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Patel at this moment.
Thanks, Duane. Hi, everybody. My name's Jennifer Patel. I'm the Regional Director for Business and Entrepreneurship. So I do the same things Duane does, but the employers I'm talking to are generally small business owners, or they have a startup. I'm really involved in the startup community, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through this. So I'm going to talk about the scope of the business sector and the importance of our business programs. And then I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship separately. So small businesses are the heart of San Diego. If students aren't starting a business, there's still a good chance that they'll be working for a small business. Today, small businesses represent 98% of San Diego's businesses, and they employ roughly 59% of the workforce here in San Diego. So this screen, oops, let me go back, shows you some fast facts. So these came from the Center of Excellence, and just a few highlights from the data that they pulled. So before I even talk about the numbers, I want to talk about how they pulled the data. These numbers look great, but they're actually way higher than this because for this sector, because it's really hard to pull data for business occupations. They can only pull it by the type of business. So what they did was any business that's in like the business sector, so maybe accounting firms, or they provide business solutions or whatever, those types of businesses are the ones that showed up in this data. So this data doesn't show like all the administrative assistants, all the payroll people that work at bigger companies that their primary business isn't a business operation. So you can see that there's over 350,000 people employed in this sector, and it's got to be way, way higher than that when you consider every business has people that are working in, again, administration and payroll, those types of jobs. So, and Imperial, same thing. But you can also see that the wages are pretty good too. So I want you to take a look at the screen. I know it's kind of small. Hopefully you have a copy of this so you can see it. And at the bottom of the screen, I have connected you to the middle skills jobs gaps in San Diego County report. Again, this was done by our Centers of Excellence. So they went through and found the 100 middle skill jobs that were the top jobs in our region. So I went through that report and pulled out all the business jobs. So you can see there's quite a few here. So just take a minute and look at this because I'm going to go to a couple more slides and you'll start to see a pattern of some of them showing up multiple times. So the second report that I pulled from was the Resilient Jobs Report. So they took a look at recession resilient jobs. So looking back when we went through that about 2008 and everything kind of hit, they went back to that time and looked at what jobs were still hiring. So again, I pulled out the business jobs from that report. So if you take a look here, you'll see some of them were also on the top middle skill job report. In the same report, the Resilient Job Report, they did pandemic resilient jobs. This was published in August. So they went through and looked at what jobs are still hiring, even though we're in a pandemic. So again, went through the report, pulled out the business jobs, and they're here. So if you just take a few minutes or a few seconds and look through the screen, you can see that, again, some of them look pretty familiar, like you've seen in the past two screens. So this just shows the importance of our business programs and that what we're teaching is super important because we're training for jobs that are real viable and that are resilient. So of those top 100 middle skill jobs, 22 of them were in the business sector. Of the top 64 recession resilient jobs, 11 are in the business sector. And of the 66 pandemic resilient jobs, 23 of those were in the business sector. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our business programs at the college. And you can see on this map all the degrees and certificates that are in our region. So take a look. You can see it varies significantly. But every one of our 10 colleges does have business programs. So when we were originally asked to put these presentations together, the reason we have all this information and collected all this data was to give our colleges an idea of what our sector looks like coming from the business community, and then kind of do a landscape of what's happening at all 10 colleges. And then they wanted us to make some recommendations. So by looking at this, one of my recommendations to the colleges was to kind of go through and make sure that, number one, their websites are up to date so that students can find things easily. It'd be a little confusing. Do I go to Miracosta? They've got 32 programs. Southwestern has 75. So I wanted them to really look at their course offerings and see that that they're making it easier for students to find their programs. So a little bit closer look at some of the programs and courses in the region. Office technology and office computer applications, you can find that there's 64 programs or courses at our 10 colleges. This is an overview of all 10 colleges. Legal office technology, business administration, business management, these are our top programs. Real estate, marketing, distribution, retail store operations and management. And then the bottom two I put on here, there's a whole lot more titles. This is just a small snippet of what we offer, but I did look at some of the ones that were lower in the offerings, and management development and supervision and sales and salesmanship were pretty low. So again, when I was making recommendations, I think that the colleges are teaching these, they're just in courses that aren't named that, right? They're showing up in the business management or the business administration courses. But I really wanted to focus on these two because working with our business community and working with startups, their problem that most of them have are finding good salespeople and getting their management people trained. So if you look at the sales jobs openings, you can see it went from like 2010 when there was less than 7,000 job postings to over 20,000 in 2019. This is a job that, again, doesn't go away because every business needs salespeople. And because we started talking about this, you can see at the bottom of this screen, it will connect you to the sales occupation report that Centers of Excellence did for us, specifically because we were taking a look at the impact on our region. So that's where these graphs and stuff came from. The other thing is the sales jobs by industry. So if you take a look at this, it's really interesting. You know, students might get into a major and then decide, I don't really want to work in the lab, but they may have that background and that understanding. And maybe they're tired of just being, you know, cooped up in their cubicle or, you know, working on something like that, but they have that background knowledge. So if you want to be in sales and you have the knowledge of that industry, this is such a good pivot for those people. So adding sales courses to some of these majors is a really, really good idea. Also, the training needed for managers. So I was actually on a call yesterday with some businesses up on the 78 corridor, and this came up numerous times, needing management training. And for some of their middle level managers and the upper management, with COVID and everybody working from home, this has completely changed how you manage a team. So this is a really good place, I think, for community colleges to take a look at how we could help our business community and maybe offer some training to their managers, especially around leading teams from, you know, in a remote environment. So entrepreneurship, this is my favorite. You know, I'm going to show you a map here of the incubators and accelerators in San Diego County. If you're not familiar with it, a startup incubator is a collaborative program for companies usually physically located in one central workplace. They're designed to help startups in their infancy, and they provide them with workspace, seed funding, mentoring, and training. So you may have heard of like Evo Nexus or J Labs is another one in the county. Also, San Diego State and UCSD both have incubator programs along with USD. And San Diego State has specifically reached out to us because they're so impressed with our students when they come out of the our programs, because they're so prepared. And then an accelerator is more the early stage. It's growth driven, so they're a little bit further along than the incubator stage, and they're there for a fixed period of time and become kind of a cohort of companies. The accelerator experience is a process of intense, rapid, and immersive education aimed at accelerating the life cycle of young, innovative companies. So you may have heard of Connect or Ad Astra Ventures. Those are a couple of them. And I've really spent a lot of time trying to network and integrate into our entrepreneurship ecosystem. So in doing so, I learned a lot about what the startup community looks like in San Diego and kind of what it's missing. So one thing about our ecosystem, in our startup ecosystem, is people are moving here from all over the country to be a part of it. So the Bay Area, you know, was all the startups. It got so expensive that people are leaving and looking for other places to start their companies because it's unaffordable. So San Diego's become a really great place. Plus the life work balance here is real nice. So when I looked at the incubators and accelerators and started talking with the people who run these, I found out like tons of people apply to get in and only a handful are accepted. So it made me start thinking about what is happening to those people who don't get in. They're just kind of left out in the cold. Sometimes they just need like a little extra help with maybe their pitch, or maybe they need to work on their business plan a little bit. Those are things that they could go to the community college and get help with, but how do they know that we're here? So I think marketing our programs to this community is a really good idea. And we've actually started an incubator program called the Regional Entrepreneurship Center, and it's hosted at Miramar College. So as we are learning, we're able to serve so many people that wouldn't normally be accepted into one of these incubators or accelerators. Also, if you look at the map, there's a huge gap in North County, East County. So there's a lot of places where we could help the ecosystem grow and fill in for people. So here again is a map of our entrepreneurship programs. I do want to make the disclaimer that all of our colleges have some sort of entrepreneurship happening. And the reason I originally presented this to the region was to show them that they're not showing up on our website that they have a program. So just keep in mind, if you're talking with students, every college has something around in entrepreneurship. It may not be a full program yet, but they're all kind of working toward that. So any of the 10 colleges would have something in entrepreneurship if you're looking for it. If your local community college has it and you want to try to, do articulation or something. So finally, these are just the some extra resources I put at the end, that careered.org, business and entrepreneurship. You'll be able to find all of our programs. The second one here, this one is for our business sector. So it's our statewide sector. And there's a lot of resources on this page also for faculty or for high school teachers. So be sure to check that out. There's a bunch of webinars that might be useful, things that you could use in class. And then our sector handout is linked here also. So I can take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. I do not have any questions in the chat, but I would love to open it up and invite everybody to either turn on their video. Perhaps we can start a discussion here. So if there are any questions for Jennifer or Duane, or if you'd like to share something that you are doing at your sites, please feel free. We'll give it a little wait time. You got a thank you from Karen or Karen.
I do have a question. This is Heidi Bridges from San Diego Virtual School, and I was just curious on the incubators that are around. If a student knows they want to do entrepreneurship and really has no idea, but they just want to start a business, would you recommend them reaching out to maybe Miramar and talking to somebody? Are there mentors there that could help them with the process more than us as a high school counselor?
Yeah, yes. So where are you located?
Well, we actually cover, our students are actually from like Imperial, Orange County, Riverside, and San
They're all
Diego.
over.
So we
Mhm.
cover, but usually, so yeah, it's really kind of difficult for us because we only have like 175 seniors, but a lot of our students really want to own a business they want to own their business. And so, we kind of push them to the community college for a business course and business courses, and we have an entrepreneurship elective course they can do online. But it's that next layer of what do you do from here? And so oftentimes we really encourage the community college to take some business classes in hopes that they find a mentor while they're at their local community college. But more and more we're getting students from San Diego area. So Miramar isn't too impossible to get there for, at least for an introduction, maybe not to do school.
Sure. And everything's virtual right now, so that's perfect. The entire regional entrepreneurship center, if you I'll look that up and try and get that sent out to you. But I'll put it. Oh, I can't do it in the chat. Anyway, if you look up Miramar College and you look up the REC, you'll find it. And they also have a ton of resources. They have videos. They do have mentors for the students in their program. One of the things Miramar is doing is looking just like the incubators and accelerators that really want these like high growth companies. Like they want these companies that are going to be like the next Facebook or whatever, right? High tech, high growth. Where most of our programs at the other colleges are more around small business. So if a student really wants to open a small business, my best suggestion to them also would be if you connect with your SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, because they have mentors there that specifically work with one-on-one with clients. And I don't know that there's an age limit. You might want to double check that, but the SBDC is a great resource because they could sign up as a client. It's all free services. And then they kind of get that one-on-one with a professional who will talk them through what steps that they need to take to actually open their business. So that could be another really good option for your students. But yes, please keep sending them to the community colleges.
Thank you so much. That was helpful.
Thanks.
And thank you, Heidi, for your question. Do we have any others? Great. Well, Jennifer and Duane, thank you so much for your wonderful session, which was very informative and provided a lot of resources. We will be taking the recording once it's ready, and it will be posted to Whova. The organizers will do that. There's a message that it'll happen within the next few weeks, and there will be access to all our participants. In the meanwhile, I'd like to thank everybody for having joined us. If you liked our session today, which I know I did, please go through your Whova and rate it for us. That helps give us feedback and let us know what other possible topics to include in future conferences. I'll be on for maybe another 2 more minutes. I just invite you to rate us and enjoy your day afterwards. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.